Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear sisters. My name is Salma. Welcome back to the channel. Here we talk about all kinds of things related to raising Muslim kids, building a healthy Muslim family, and all the challenges that come with it, right? This is not a really, a perfect kind of channel. I think I want to more focus on the challenges in the real situation, and I think as you guys can see from the comments that have been coming to the, topics or the things we discussed in the last couple of weeks, there's a lot of sisters that are not feeling heard and that they're not feeling seen with their challenges, right? Like we have always the ideal presented in the Muslim community, the lecture and the course and the workshop and stuff. But then, nobody talks about the reality, how it is actually day to day and how it is for moms, right? And my goal here is to make you feel seen, to provide a bit of a community, to help each other with practical tips, because often we give up then because, we feel alone and we feel isolated and shaitan gets to us. So the goal here is not to lower our standards, but to actually increase our standards and then to find ways to work together and to feel encouraged, right? So I'm answering questions here as they come. I don't really have a preset agenda with the YouTube videos, this is my schedule, this is what I'm going to be talking about. I'm kind of taking my lead from you guys, from the comment section, from what you're asking me, and the more you guys contribute, the better the channel will be, because we're trying to build a community here. Inshallah, in January, we'll be opening up a virtual community called Mommy Mondays, and I'll make a separate video about what Mommy Mondays is about. But basically, it's a platform where it'll be a virtual community for women to come together in a private setting, not on YouTube, obviously, but in a setting where we can discuss these real issues and we can be of support to one another. So please join the link below for the wait list, for the community as I build it off of social media. But the idea is basically that we would come together and we would discuss all these issues and help each other move forward, inshallah. All right. So there was a question in the comment section, and I think I'm just going to rephrase it. I'm not gonna, read it off exactly. But the sister was asking about what to do when the children don't want to pray. What to do when kids are resisting. And she said they were not in puberty yet. They were not grown children. They were not Islamically responsible, so to speak. And so, but they were resisting and they were, it felt like she has to reward them with screen time and gaming and these kind of things, right? Now, that's a common problem, I think, in many, many households. How do we get the children to pray? How do we get them to enjoy prayer? How do we get them to not resist, right? And so there's a couple of things I want to unpack here. I think we have to first kind of start with what's going on. I like to kind of do that. I like to kind of define things as they are and then kind of dig a little bit deeper what's behind this so we can kind of hopefully stumble upon a solution together, inshallah, right? So children are Islamically obliged to pray when? Right? Like what are the hadith that we're kind of looking at? We're looking at the hadith that are talk about, instructing your children to pray when they're 7 and then encouraging them, or disciplining them when they're 10, when they're not praying. And then of course Islamically they become responsible once they hit puberty, right? Then they will be questioned for their deeds and first of all their prayer, right? So that's kind of the timeline we're working at. And so what I have found, the Muslim parents are almost always operating from a place of fear. Now, not from like a place of fear of Jahannam or anything like that, but like a fear of that they're going to miss out, that if they don't do this thing right now, it'll be all doom and gloom. Like, if they don't fix this thing now, the child will never pray, right? Or like if a child doesn't do this little thing now, it would always be like this, right? And so I want you to think of this, it's a process, right? And even our own prayer is a process, right? We have days where we might have felt like, not so excited about praying, right? Or where, sisters have shared on this forum here publicly that it's difficult maybe when they're pregnant, when they have young children, that they feel guilty, that, So prayer is one of those things that's highly intimate, like it's, everybody is struggling with it in their own way, but it's also one of the first and foremost pillars of Islam, right? So I'm not suggesting here, we kind of back off from the idea. No. I'm actually suggesting like to take a really good critical look at it. Like, what are we doing to encourage prayer in our household, right? So first and foremost, we have to start out with ourselves. Like, how are we modeling the prayer? How are we how are we talking about the prayer often? And, I'm guilty of this myself. We don't really explain it to the children. We just say we have to pray. We just say, and we kind of fall into this trap because young kids, they are mimicking us, right? And so when you have these clips online from little toddlers, or you notice from your own household, little toddlers will join you. They will just mimic the movements, and they will kind of stand right next to us. And those are awesome things, right? Same like they mimic us, the way we're brushing our teeth or the way we're eating and all these kind of things. This is an amazing thing. But just because they're mimicking our movements doesn't mean that they know what's going on, right? And so we kind of I find Muslim parents fall into this trap where we kind of go really hardcore when kids are really young. So we kind of want to make sure we catch them while they're young, right? And so we put such emphasis on these kind of things, right? That we want to make sure. But children are often not ready. They're often not ready to do more beyond that mimicking, right? To just join us in prayer. And so first and foremost, the prayer instruction should be a lot about our modeling the prayer, and not just the prayer itself, the movement and these kind of things, but the whole thing surrounding it, right? That we talk about, oh, I don't feel like praying right now, but I'm going to get up anyway, right? That we model the struggle, that we model how difficult it is to wake up for Fajr, that we model, that we articulate that sometimes praying Isha is hard because it's late at night and we're tired and exhausted, but we're going to get up anyway. That we talk about what prayer does for us. And, and to be honest, what does prayer do for you? Does prayer make you feel better? Does prayer make you feel connected? Do your children know that? Like, are you having these kind of discussions, right? So we start with ourselves. We start with, examining our prayers, and then we start, communicating with our children, with our families, what prayer means in our daily life, right? Beyond just the mimicking, beyond just, the movements and these kind of things, right? Number two is to set the expectations according to their age, right? And to realize that this is a journey. Okay. And so if our young children, I've seen situations, when the mothers are quite strict on the 7-year-old who's not praying. I want to say, chill out. I want to say, relax, because, pressure is never a good thing. And often we put that pressure on ourselves, on the children, again, all these things that I'm saying, they're not necessarily very easy to do. But, if we can back off slightly, if we see that the child is resisting, putting more pressure is not necessarily going to be a good thing. And think of yourself. If anybody's pushing you towards something, it's a natural reaction in the human. This counter will, when we're told to do something, we naturally resist. And why do we naturally resist? Because it's not, it's kind of a built-in mechanism of survival in us, right? If some stranger were to come up to you and tell you to do something, your first reaction would be, nope, I don't want to do it, right? So often, before we instruct our children to do something, there needs to be a relationship with them, right? There needs to be a connection. There needs to be a situation where our children are doing what we tell them. And in order for us to correct them, we need to connect with them, right? Like we need to have a relationship. So often in many Muslim households, the discussion on prayer looks like, hey, it's Dhuhr time. Come on, everybody go pray, right? Oh, what are you doing? Come on, get up, go make wudu, go pray, right? There's not a lot of connecting going on. And again, I've been there and done that. This is why I'm saying it. Often I've said, okay, time's running out. Come on, get up, go, just do it. So there's not a lot of connecting with the child, not a lot of checking in to just kind of see where we're at, checking the pulse of the situation, right? And so the second point that I'm trying to make here is that connection has to come before correction. And often prayer is just presented in that sort of let's go get this done, or we're correcting the child, we're telling them what to do, and naturally a counter will develop. So naturally, and particularly if the children are not feeling close to us at that moment, like if we've been disciplining them whole day, if we've been telling them off whole day, and then all of a sudden we'll tell them to go pray, naturally they might be rolling their eyes and just kind of saying like, I'm not in the mood, right? And as the sister mentioned in the comment, sometimes they may be even lying about performing the prayer. Sometimes they're just getting it done because it's a requirement in order to get some screen time. It's a requirement to get something, right? And so how do we develop this connection? How do we resist this counter will? And I think it, back off, reduce the pressure, reduce the have to, particularly in small children, right? And so when the sister is describing the situation with her preteens who are possibly 10 or 12 years old, who are in that stage where they're trying to, understand the world themselves, right? And so they're still listening to their parents, but they're still kind of, they're kind of approaching that age where they're going to be thinking, do you think applying more pressure is going to make them less likely or more likely to pray when they're teenagers, right? And so we want to kind of get to the point where they are responsible for their own prayers, where they will be praying. Like, what's our goal here? What's the end goal? The end goal is that we have practicing Muslim children who enjoy and benefit from the prayer, right? That they see the benefit of from in their lives, right? But are we achieving that by the methods we're using? Are we achieving it? And I think a lot of it's just fear-based. Well, if I don't make them pray right now, they will never pray later on, right? And so I'm suggesting backing off. I'm suggesting reducing the pressure and having that conversation, connecting with the child, and maybe not in the moment when Dhuhr is running out and there's 5 minutes left to pray, but rather having a conversation like, hey, what about the prayer? Why is it so annoying? And my kids have communicated, for example, that they don't like the pressure of it. Like, when I tell them go pray on time, when I tell them get up and do this, time's running out, or guests are coming, let's go get it done. Just that pressure and being told what to do makes them resist it, right? But if we kind of leave some space where they can start being responsible for it, right? Where they can, I remember one of the sisters telling me how she was asking me how to handle the situation with her son and making wudu, and then she would be like, yeah, I tell him to go make wudu, and then he comes out of the bathroom 14 seconds later and I see his elbows are not even wet, and then I'm asking him, well, how did you make wudu and stuff? And she's like, oh, like, I'm struggling, what do I do? And imagine having your wudu micromanaged like that. Imagine having a mother, who's waiting in front of the bathroom to check if you made wudu properly. And we're talking here about a preteen boy, probably he would do the bare minimum, right? Like, think about it. Like, this would be the most natural thing to do. But then she's afraid. She's like, well, if I don't make him pray, what's going to happen? And so I think when we reduce the force, when we reduce the pressure, when we start looking at the full picture, children often don't understand what the benefit is. And prayer just becomes this tool of oppression, honestly, in a lot of Muslim households, right? Just look at the Muslim TikTok or Instagram, or where young people are hanging out and, the slipper or the parent being mad, or, there's very few approaches, where young children say that they grew up in this loving atmosphere of prayer being encouraged, or and keep in mind, prayer is in a foreign language. Many of the kids don't even understand what they're saying. They don't even know what they're reciting. We are learning the movements mechanically. So of course, then everything else becomes more interesting. And often we use other things as a sort of a bribe, right, to get them to pray. Okay, if you pray, then you'll get some screen time. Or if you pray, you're going to get, and I mean, think about it. This is so much more fast-paced, it's so much more exciting, right? So prayer in comparison seems very, very boring, right? And so I totally get, so this, why I'm making this video. We're just kind of chit-chatting. I'm here in the car waiting for something. So I figured that, I'd record it quickly. I think when we look at the situation, we have to first understand, why are our children resisting? And they're not resisting because they're bad Muslims, okay? They're not resisting because they hate us, or they're not resisting because they want to manipulate us. I want you to put those glasses on that we discussed in previous videos, where you kind of come alongside the child. Will you try to understand what's behind this? Why is this child behaving like this, And if we go with the philosophy, children behave well if they can, but if they're resisting, something's happening there, right? And so I suggest in starting to work on the relationship, I start working on the whole package, rather just, on pushing and doubling down on the prayer, right? And so taking off that pressure, taking off. Now, a lot of people are scared of that. They're scared, well, if I leave my kid to my own devices, they will never do anything. Well, what's the atmosphere in your household? Do you really have an atmosphere where nobody does anything unless they're forced to? How about meal times? How about sleep? How about routines of your daily life, right? Like, does everything have to happen under pressure? That's kind of where I would start, right? And so this video is not going to have a practical 3-tip solution how to make your child pray and get success. A lot of it's dua, right? Most of it's dua, but also in a practical sense, I want you to kind of take a look and analyze what's going on. What's the relationship with my child like? From the scale from 1 to 10, are we feeling particularly close? And when children are resisting, they feel like we're not listening to them. They don't feel heard. They just feel like we're bossing them around. So often, over the years, I've had these situations in my household, and whenever I was pushing, it was my fault. I had to take responsibility because I was coming from a place of fear. I was coming from a place of scarcity. I was coming from a place of anger. And children can feel that, right? So what it is that we're trying to achieve, what it is, our end goal is children who are praying, children who enjoy prayers, children who feel responsible for their own prayers, children who get up and do it with love and care, right? Not just because we're around and we're shoving it down their throats, right? And so my suggestion would be to relieve the pressure slightly, have a good sit down with yourself and think about, what's the current atmosphere? Am I feeling connected to this particular child? Am I just barking orders at them? When it's time to pray, what is our situation like? Is there enough space? Is there enough space for the children to feel the benefit of the prayer? Most children don't feel any positive points after having prayed, right? And so it's very difficult for them to stick to the practice because everything else, they see the benefit immediately, right? They play video games for 30 minutes. Okay, there is a benefit, right? But what do they get if they prayed for 5 minutes with their mother standing over them and, admonishing them? So anything that we don't see a benefit in immediately, we don't want to do it, right? And particularly if we feel like, we're being constantly overcorrected. Unfortunately, this happens a lot in the Muslim space, even in regards to Quran learning, even in regards to, we are constantly corrected, we're constantly examined, we're constantly, now, this is something that we will be asked on the Day of Judgment, yes, but it's not our job in this dunya to make life difficult for everybody else, right? So I think often we don't come from a place of love and care. We come from a place of fear. We come from a place of fear that even other people are going to judge us. I remember many years ago, I was hosting a gathering for women, and we were about to pray Maghrib, and we were all getting ready. And my son, at that point, was maybe 7-ish. He was definitely not in an age where he was praying regularly or anything close to that. And I remember one of the sisters asking me, well, aren't you going to tell him to pray? Like, because he is 7 years old and he should be instructed. And I told her, I'm like, it's not the place and the time to tell him to pray now in a gathering full of women, because now it would just feel that I'm trying to make an example out of him, right? That I was like, oh, now we're all going to pray and you're going to have to, do something about it, And I said, this is not the time and the place. And, it would not achieve anything except me showing off in front of the sisters that my son is praying, right? And so we have to examine our intentions. We have to examine our views, what it is that we're scared of. Why are we applying all this pressure on the children? How can we make a better conversation? And how can we have a dialogue with our children? How can we speak to them and ask them, how could we make this better, right? How can we make this better? Like, what would help you take prayer seriously? What would help you? Maybe they might ask you something simple. It's like, well, I don't even know what it means. Could you explain it to me? Or, are we encouraging them to make dua for the things they want in sujood? How are we? And I love that interaction with the children. So think about it. How can you have a conversation with your children in a way that you connect with them rather than you correct them? Okay. So I hope this helps, inshallah. Please keep having the conversation in the comments, inshallah, so I can see if this is helpful and what other issues you're struggling with, inshallah, and so we can come to a solution together as a community. All right. I hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next video, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.